Anthony Brindisi on the phone. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Not bad.
Yeah. You heard the discussion earlier, Anthony, on the downtown hospital location. Jim Brock was in, and Claudia Tenney was on the phone. Any reactions to those comments?
You know, all I can say is that, and I think Greg will agree with me on this one, as a lawyer, when you go into a courtroom, when you are questioning a jury trying to decide who's going to sit on your jury, one of the first things you ask them is, can you keep an open mind, can you be impartial, and can you hold off making up your mind before you hear all the facts? And unfortunately, in this situation, what you have is Mr. Brock, who claims that he's speaking out on behalf of board members, who has made up his mind on something before he has any of the information that is out there. Now, there's a process that's going on right now. Our community, in its past history, has a poor history of squandering great opportunities. And we've been given a great opportunity here by the state of New York by giving $300 million to construct a new healthcare facility, which is desperately needed. You have St. Elizabeth's, which is over 100 years old. There's parts of that building on the first floor where the first floor is actually sinking. You have patients who are in hallways. You have St. Luke's, which was built in the 50s, which it would cost more to actually try and renovate that than to construct a new hospital. What we want with an aging population is a brand new state-of-the-art healthcare facility. We want to make sure that it's in an area in this region that can be easily accessible by people who lack a car or adequate transportation to get to a hospital. And if there's an economic development benefit to it as well, that's great. Now, I said that I was part of the drafting of the legislation, and I did put in there that I think it should stay in the city of Utica because of that access issue. So let the hospital go through its process. They've hired a well-known group to help them and assist them with their site selection. This group has done hospitals all over the country. So they're gathering facts. They're looking at a number of sites. And if a hospital doesn't work in downtown Utica because of infrastructure or other reasons, I would be the first to say I don't want a hospital in downtown Utica. But let the hospital board go through the process instead of spreading a lot of bad information out there based on a false premise. You know, Mr. Brock is, last I checked, not an infrastructure expert, although he claims to be. He's not a downtown development expert, although he seems to claim to be. And he's not a healthcare expert. The hospital has hired experts to try and help them work through this process. Let that process play out, and there will be time for community engagement. There will be a time to discuss the reuse of the buildings. That's all stuff that is built into the legislation before the hospital can get the money to build a new hospital.
Anthony, that process about discussing the potential locations, according to Mr. Brock, is taking place in, I think I quote him correctly, seedy, smoke-filled back rooms. How do you respond to that criticism from Mr. Brock?
It's ridiculous, and that's the scare tactic that many have used in this area over the years to try and claim something bad is going on. It's a very open process. The board is working through the process. They have to engage the community at some point on what their plans are. There's a group of people that like to say, oh, things are being done in smoke-filled rooms, the public's not engaged, and it's just a way to try and scare the public. But the fact of the matter is, the elected officials in this area, I think, have done a good job over the last few years representing the people's interest in Albany and doing a good job bringing funding back to our area for economic development projects. It's not done in smoke-filled rooms. It's done in an open, transparent process, and the people in the region are benefiting right now from increased attention from the state of New York, which is something that I have never seen over the last 3 decades of my lifetime living in the city.
Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi joining us on the Talk of the Town.
Anthony, I think one of the questions is, why were we so blessed to be highlighted and singled out to receive this money and this funding for a new hospital?
The Department of Health recognized that we are doing it right here in terms of health care in Oneida County. You had St. Luke's and St. Elizabeth's come together and affiliate themselves to try and help deliver health care in a more efficient manner and trying to save the state money in terms of Medicaid dollars. The state recognized that, and they rewarded them for doing that. You have hospitals like in Syracuse that don't even talk to each other. They don't work together at all. But the state recognized that the hospitals in this area do work together very well, and they wanted to reward that. We were one of 2 areas in the entire state to get funding for a new hospital. The other was Brooklyn. So I think it's pretty significant for the state to step up and say, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to reward good behavior, and that's why you saw the funding coming to our area. There's nothing bad about the process. That's simply what happened.
I know you said you helped write this into the code there about having the hospital. It must be within the city of Utica, or we might lose the funding for that. How many different locations are possible?
There's a number of locations that I've heard. I think that they were looking at 12 different locations at one point. I think they've narrowed it down to a few different locations. They have to do what's right for the hospital. They have to make sure that they're providing a good quality of health care to the people in this region. And that's all I've been saying all along to Mr. Brock when I spoke to him on the phone and to others, is let the hospital go through the process. No one is dictating to the hospital what they need to do, but let's listen to the experts, and they have brought in the experts to help them work through this process. And then we can see what they come back with and have a discussion over what we think is the best, what they think is the best area for a new hospital. But it's something that's going to impact this community for the next 75 to 100 years. Let's get it right now, because it certainly is going to have a lasting impact. Have I said, yes, I think a downtown location would be nice? Absolutely. You look at studies done by the Brookings Institute or other groups that talk about eds and meds, educational institutions and medical institutions, as being anchors for downtown development. Downtown is a location that is easily accessible by the arterial and many different roadways. There's infrastructure in place down there in terms of sewers and water that are ideal for a hospital, and it can help revitalize an area of the city that has been long neglected. Putting 4,000 people working into downtown Utica is going to have an economic benefit to the surrounding area in terms of the restaurants, the shops, people who need to come in to visit, people who are in the hospital will have access to hotels to stay in. What I don't want to see is a hospital built way out in the suburbs where people who don't own a car, lack transportation, where the buses don't run by, can't get to. That's important to me, is making sure that the people who will benefit the most from the hospital can easily access it.